Okay, so welcome to this session about the core difference when the core matters. Okay, my name is Semir Haddad. I am the senior marketing manager in charge of general purpose microcontrollers in Renesas Americas. And I've been working in the industry, in the electronic industry for 18 years, with 15 years in the semiconductor industry itself, and 10 years and I have 10 years of experience in managing microcontrollers product and doing marketing for microcontrollers products. I have a master in electrical engineering, and I have an MBA. And as you can figure out with my accent, I'm French. And I come from, in fact, the south of France. And very often people in the US tell me, but why did you move from the beautiful south of France? So I tell them, yeah, I moved from the south of France, but I'm in California now. So you can see with the good weather, good food, it's very nice as well. So everything that you are going to see today is the result of the investment of by Renesas in three main pillars that are the pillars of Renesas products. That is the system LSI, the microcontrollers, and the analog and power technology. So of course, this lecture today is focused on CPU cores and microcontrollers. So we will mainly speak about microcontrollers. So for those of you that were at DEF CON in 2010, this slide may look familiar. I'm showing here the 5 product families that were the main product families in 2010. So it was the result of the merger between Renesas Technology and NEC. So we were promoting the Super Edge family, V850, RX, the RX product line, the 78K0, and the R8C. So since then, we have made some work in order to rationalize a little these different product families, which means that we are continuing, of course, to support all these products. So we'll continue to produce this product for many years. We continue to support all these products. But we have decided to focus a little more on developments for new products. And so we're focusing on 3 main lines. So the first one is the RH850. That's our high-performance product line, MCU product line, mainly for automotive in 40-nanometer technology. So it delivers outstanding performance with 1200 DMIPS peak. We have the second product line that we are focusing on is the RX product line. So this product line is meant for the general purpose market, industrial market. And it's a continuation, so it could be also a follow-up of, let's say, if you have designed today with V850 in the industrial market, RX could be also a good solution because we are bringing new products in the RX family that could fit your future needs. And the last product line that we are focusing on is in the low power, low end, let's say, range is the RL78. So the RL78 is the follow-on of our 78K and R8C. It brings very good performance, 44 DMIPS, and true low power. So we say that it's true low power because it brings low power in every dimension of the operation of the MCU. So the lecture today will focus on the RX family as an example of implementation of CPU cores in MCUs. The theme of this DEF CON is enabling the smart society. So what does that mean for cores? So if you think about CPU cores, you will be designing smart objects, smart devices, and you will need an MCU that is smart in terms of the way it's using the power and the way it's delivering the performance. So we have to, one of your problems is to choose the good MCU and the smart MCU. And when you choose an MCU, you have to think about what is the core that is embedded inside this MCU. Does that matter first? And if it matters, what are the parameters that I should look at to choose my MCU and my CPU core. So this lecture will explain how, when in your application the core matters, when in your design you have to look at the core, and give you some clues about how to select this CPU core and this MCU. So I'm going to cover first what are the CPU cores in the industry, what are the CPU cores used for microcontrollers. I'm focusing on microcontrollers today. And then I will ask the question, should you care? What are your criteria to choose a CPU core in a microcontroller? So you have criteria like performance, power consumption, code size, the tools and software, the product breadth. And I will ask also a simple question at the end is there anything like a standard MCU? Then I will put it all together and we go to our conclusion. So first, let's have a look at the CPU cores for MCUs in the industry. So you have many cores that are used in microcontrollers in the industry. So we can start with, let's say, the IP cores. So for instance, from MIPS and from ARM, these are cores that this company will license to vendors to design their product. Then you can see you have some cores from organizations like power.org. And then you have many cores from vendors. And if you look, for instance, at Renesas, Renesas itself has at least 4 cores that are active today: RX, V850, SuperH, and RH78. So at the end, you have many cores to choose from when you want to design, when you want to choose a microcontroller product. So the question you ask yourself, looking at your application, what is the core that I should use, and does it matter in my application? And we will see that typically if you have a motor control application, you will be concerned about real-time behavior, and then the core will have some impact on the real-time behavior of your application. If you have a low-power device, a portable device, you will be interested in low power. And here also, the core will have some impact on the power the power efficiency of your system. So these parameters will impact these parameters that are related to the core will impact the final application. So let's have a look at the criteria that we can select, we can define to select a CPU core in your microcontroller. So the first one, that is the most obvious one, and this is the one that is heavily advertised by many CPUs, like CPU cores, IP suppliers, or by many vendors, is performance. So performance, you can see it 3 ways. So the first one is the computing performance. So you have benchmarks like CoreMarks and Drystone that are benchmarks that are heavily used in the industry. Then you have the real-time behavior. So real-time behavior means your interrupt latency, the number of different interrupts that you have, and the determinism of your microcontroller. And then the last parameter concerning performance is the DSP capability of your MCU and your CPU core. So typically, that's translated into single cycle MAC, DSP instruction that you will have in your core, and maybe also a floating point unit. So I'm showing here in this slide, I just want to show here that some main cores that exist on the industry that have some industry acceptance, and I want to show you on this slide comparing these cores that if you look at looking at the performance, if you want to look at the performance, the computing performance, the comparison is straightforward. You just have to look at the DMIPS per megahertz, okay? Then you can look at the frequency, max frequency, and you have an idea of the performance of your core. And you can see here that, for instance, looking at the RX 600, I have 1.65 DMIPS per megahertz. It's quite high compared to all competing cores. It's the highest, in fact, in the industry today. And we have a frequency up to 100 megahertz, so it could give you the peak performance that you can get. But there is one parameter that is very often overlooked, and it's very important. It's your flash speed, because when you choose an MCU, you are choosing a product that has embedded flash, and the interface between your CPU and your flash will have a big impact on your performance. And this I can show you it that way, is that with our RX600 series, RX600 product, for instance, we have a flash that is zero waste state up to 100 megahertz. So that means that you can run the CPU up to 100 megahertz without any waste state directly from the flash. And competitors usually have some waste state because they have a flash that is the lower frequency. That is really unique to Renesas to have this 100 megahertz flash. Competitors have flash that run up to 30 megahertz, usually maybe 40. And every time they hit this barrier, they will have one waste state. So even if they have some smart acceleration, at the end, they will have, that will have an impact on their performance. So we can really easily compute the impact of these waste states on the performance of your system and show what exactly is the real performance of your system. I'm showing here some comparison between the RX600 and some competitors using the Cortex-M4 core from ARM. And you can see that theoretically, if you look at the max frequency, you could have a performance of the RX600 of 165 DMIPS. And the other ones, we have at least two of the other solutions that show higher numbers theoretically. But then you have to compete. You have to compute the flash speed, and you have to compute the impact of waste state on the performance. So you can see here that our flash speed is 100 megahertz, while the flash speed for the other guys is maximum 40, and two have a flash speed of 30 megahertz. So which means that when you execute at the maximum frequency, they will have waste states. In the case of Renesas, we have no waste states. It's directly 100 megahertz from the flash. In the case of the other guys, you have up to 5 waste states. So but all these it's fair to say that all these solutions have also some acceleration to mitigate the impact of waste states. So let's be very, let's say, optimistic with the effectiveness of this acceleration. And we say that they have some acceleration. So every time they have waste state, they have only 5% impact on the performance. 5% is not much, and I think it's a fair estimate of what is the impact when you have some acceleration. And then you can calculate the real performance. So the real performance they will get, so it's a little complicated, but I read you the formula, is the theoretical max DMIPS time 1 minus the waste state impact to the power of the number of waste states that you have. So the more waste state you have, the more the impact. And then when you compute that, you have a surprise, because our RX600 with 100 megahertz frequency then outperform all the other solutions. Even the guy with 158 megahertz at the end can only deliver 162 DMIPS, less than the RX600 at 100 megahertz. So this is to show you how the system also has an impact on the performance, and having the core performance, the maximum performance is very good, and we have with the RX a very good core performance, but you have also to look at the global system and the memory system around the core. And another impact that you have with the waste state is that you have also some impact on real-time performance, which means that every time, so in the case of RX, we have 0 waste state, we have no cache, so it's directly every time you have no cache miss, in fact, and every time you have an interrupt, you execute at 100 megahertz and so on. In the case of the other guys, they have some acceleration, and they have some cache, which is kind of cache. So every time you have a miss in this cache, typically you have many interrupts or you have many branches, you will get a cache miss, and it will execute at the speed of the flash. It means that you will move suddenly from 168 megahertz to 30 megahertz. So it has a big impact in terms of real-time performance and in terms of determinism. So this is a good transition for the second point concerning performance, which is the interrupt latency. So, and the real-time performance. So it's important when you choose your core and you choose your MCU to consider the real-time behavior. Real-time behavior can have an impact if you have typically lots of interrupts in your system. If you have lots of latency to get into the interrupt, then it will have a dramatic impact in your performance of your system at the end. And so in the case of the RX MCU and the RX core, so we have an interrupt latency that is very short. It's only 7 cycles to get from the interrupt to the interrupt handler, and 6 cycles to exit this interrupt handler. But then we have also another mode. We have one dedicated fast interrupt, one fast interrupt in the CPU. So it's an interrupt that will execute faster than the other ones. And this one is only 5 cycles to get to the interrupt handler and 3 cycles to exit. And then at the end, you can even configure this fast interrupt such a way that you have some dedicated registers to be used by the interrupt handler. So which means that you don't even need to save your registers and to restore your registers when you enter the interrupt. And with this mode of the fast interrupt, so this is a mode that you can configure in the compiler. You can just say, I select these 2 or 3 registers for the fast interrupt. Then the fast interrupt will have a latency of 5 cycles only, and you will exit in 3 cycles. So in 5 cycles, you will be able to execute your handler, and 3 cycles, you exit. So at the end, it's only 5 cycles to get into the interrupt handler in this mode with the fast interrupt. Well, if you compare to other solutions like Cortex-M3 and Cortex-M4 from ARM, it's a 12 cycle, it's a consistent 12 cycles to get into the interrupt. So how does that translate in a real product? How do you see that in a real product? Once again, here I'm comparing an RX 600 with 3 solutions based on the Cortex-M4 from ARM. And we can see that the RX 600 with the fast interrupt, you have only 8 cycles to enter and exit the interrupt. That's the global overhead of your interrupt. While for the other solutions, we have 24 cycles, 12 cycles to enter and 12 cycles to exit the interrupt. So if you have few interrupts, it's not a big deal. But if you have let's say typically a control loop where you have lots of interrupts, lots of timers giving you lots of interrupts, typically a motor control application, that will have a significant impact on your application. And the last parameter concerning performance is DSP capability. So I'm going back to this chart with what I'm comparing cores, 32-bit cores available on the market. So so you have some cores that don't have any DSP capability, but this is becoming more and more common. So I would say when you will want to have a look at DSP capability, you will have a look at the MAC if you have a multiply accumulate in your CPU core. And you will have a look also at the floating point unit. So multiply accumulate is quite common, but floating point unit is less common. And for instance, with the RX family, we have by default in all our RX 600 products the floating point unit. And one thing that we have, you can see also that we compare very well with the others, because one thing that we have the 48-bit and 80-bit accumulator. So which means that when you do a Mac, you can go 48-bit for a 16 by 16 or 80-bit for a 32-bit by 32-bit. So which means that you have less, we have a more dynamic for the result of your Mac, and you have less processing to do to check if your result is, if there is an overflow in your result. So this is one thing that you would like, if you want to, you're interested in a DSP performance, more and more applications are implement some algorithms. You will have a look at this. You need this, in fact, in the core. You need this Mac, and you need this FPU. So second criteria that you may want to look at when choosing a core for your microcontroller is power. So I'm showing here a typical application. I'm showing here how the power in your application can be measured. Usually power is measured with current and time. So you say, how much current do I take for how long? And then you will have the calculation of your power. So typically, in application where you have some interest in saving power, you will put most of the time your system in standby mode, and then you will wake up. Then you will go execute maybe at full speed because you want to execute something very fast. And then you can also execute at reduced speed because you want to save a little, save a little the power, and you are waiting for an event, or you want to just to be able to monitor something. And then you go back to standby. And then you do all that again. And that gives you your average power. So this is typically, if you're concerned about power in your application, this is the way you will think about the way your application operates. Yes?
So you mentioned that the interrupt cycles are like 8 cycles for the getting in, 5 cycles to get in, and then 3 cycles to get out.
Yes.
If you're in standby mode, how does that affect it? Is that still the same, or is it?
So if you're, okay, so this is different, yeah. So the question is about, I was mentioning about the interrupt latency. That is very fast with RX, and the question is if the interrupt latency, how is the interrupt latency when you're in standby mode? Okay, so in fact, while you're in standby mode, you can wake up from an interrupt, of course, but the latency will be longer because you have to restart your CPU. So it depends on the level of standby mode that you have. Typically, I would say that so it's far longer than, it's not immediate, it takes some time. Typically, I would say, for instance, with our latest products, or RX 100 that we just announced that we have some sample about this product, we can go down to 4 microseconds to when starting from the lowest low power mode to the run mode. So 4 microseconds, I would say, in the range of few microseconds, it's the best you can get today, because you have to restart everything. Okay. Now you have some other standby mode, lower, let's say a little. You have some different levels of standby modes. So there are some standby modes where you can keep everything running or keep the clock running. So the power will be more, but you can wake up almost immediately. But I just want to show how the CPU core itself impacts the power consumption. So if you look at the core efficiency if you look at the power when you are in full speed or reduced speed mode, here the power is really definitely directly let's say a factor of your core efficiency. So how your CPU core is able to perform, and how it is able to what let's say DMIPS or core marks you can give for each milliamps it takes. If you look at the power consumption and in standby mode and the power consumption and the wake up, let's say time, this is more really related to the system and the technology. It's not really related to the core. It depends. In fact, the standby power consumption, you have everything is shut down, so it's related really to the way your silicon technology is designed to have the lowest leakage, the lowest possible leakage. So it's fair to say also that if you look at an MCU and how the core, the CPU core is designed in an MCU, the CPU core is just a tiny portion of the MCU. If you look at the power consumption, then the power consumption of your global device when executing something, it's in addition, it's a combination of the power consumption of your memories, the power consumption of your peripherals, so digital and analog peripherals, and the power consumption of your core. So the core is just a portion of the global power consumption of your system, of your MCU. And so this is the first thing, that it's not the CPU has an impact, but is not the only let's say, only thing that has an impact on your power consumption. And the second thing is that there is also, you have also to look at the core implementation. If you look at some, let's say, advertised power numbers, you look at typically the core from the MIPS core, a MIPS core that is used, for instance, in PIC32, or the ARM M0 core, Cortex M0 core. These people will advertise very low power consumption, microamps per megahertz, because their business is to sell core. So they just do some marketing on their core, and they say, okay, our core is very low power, ultra low power. But you have to think about what is the result in the implementation. And then we look at the real product at the end, the story is very different. You can see that the core consumption, we are looking at, let's say, 13 to 40 microamps per megahertz advertised by ARM for their M0 core. If you look at the real product, executing real code, not executing a NOP or a while one loop, it's 150 microamps per megahertz. And it's even worse for the, in the case of MIPS and PIC32. And then if you compute the DMIPS per megahertz, what really can you do with this power consumption? For each megahertz, what computing can you do? You can see that with our RX200 in Renesas, we have quite a good story. We have very good performance in terms of milliamps per DMIPS. And this is because in Renesas, we have a holistic approach to our design. We're not only designing the CPU core, we're not only designing, let's say, the MCU, we're not only designing the flash technology, but we are designing the three elements, so the core, the system, and the flash. So we design everything so that the system is very efficient at the end. So if you look again with real products, how does that translate into real product? So I'm once again comparing the RX600 with some competitors with the Cortex M4 core. And you can see that in terms of milliwatts per DMIPS, our RX600 is the leader with 1.04 milliwatt per DMIPS. The closest competitor is 1.46. They did 1.46. So these are numbers coming from the data sheets while a product is executing something and with a peripheral on. So it's a real, let's say, a real number. It's not just, sometimes you will see numbers with peripheral off, that nothing is running, and you have the CPU executing a while one loop, which is basically doing nothing. Here I'm showing doing computing and with peripheral on. And that's where you see it's a real application. Or at the end, what is the power consumption of your system? So the third criteria that you can consider when choosing your CPU core for your microcontroller is code size. So code size has an impact definitely in terms of cost in your system, because the smaller the code is, the smaller device you can choose. So we will pay a little less for your microcontroller. And sometimes it's very important because you may be at the limit of your the MCU that you have chosen, and you cannot go above the code size that you the code size limit. So it's fair to say that all 32-bit architecture today have some way to improve condensity. It's no longer the case that when you say, oh, I'm 32-bit, so it's twice the code size as 16-bit. In fact, code size, when you have compiled code, the code size with 32-bit is equivalent to the code size with 16-bit devices. If you look at some popular architecture, so ARM, RX, AVR, MIPS, so all these have some ways to improve the code size and code density. Typically, ARM have the thumb2 instruction set, so it's a subset of the instructions with a 16-bit size. AVR, they have a variable length instruction. MIPS, they have what they call the MIPS 16E, so it's a 16-bit encoding of 32-bit instructions. And in the case of RX, so we have a blend of RISC and CISC instruction and some advanced addressing modes. And one thing that we have also that helps a lot in terms of code size optimization is the move optimization. So I'm going to give more detail about that. So let's have a look at the Rx instruction set. You can see here that we have like 6% of our instruction are one byte, or okay, start with 1 byte length. 49% of our instruction are 2 byte length, and 42% of the instruction, all the rest, are 3 byte lengths or little more. So that means that with all these instructions that let's say that's these instructions that have a variable length, you can we make it possible for the compiler to really optimize the code and to choose the right instruction to optimize the code size. And another thing that we have in Rx is our move instruction optimization. So what does that mean? In a traditional RISC architecture, when you want to do move data in memory, you have to do a load and you have to do a store. So you load to a register and then you store from the register to memory. You load from memory to register and you store from register to memory. So this is 4 bytes total, and it takes 4 cycles. In the case of Rx, we have a move instruction, so that does exactly that, but it needs only 2 bytes, and the number of cycles to perform that is 3 cycles. So the instruction is just move from one address, and the CPU will do that. And why is that important? It's important because when we designed the Rx CPU, we did a survey with real code, real applications. So we did a survey with 32 applications, 32 code that we analyzed. And at the end, we find out that in this code, the move instruction, let's say just let's say moving data from one memory to another memory space to another memory space, was 31% of the code. So you can see that with 31% of your code doing this, having this optimization will have a very good impact on the code size. And this is what we show here, is that we made some analysis comparing our RX600 code with Cortex M3 code from ARM. So we did the same. So we took 5 applications, so motor control, data communication, data conversion, real-time control, and system control. So these applications are real applications that we design with our customers. And we compiled the same code with RX and with ARM. And at the end, we had a code size improvement up to 28% with RX compared to ARM. So now I've reviewed more or less let's say really the hard criteria that are directly related to the CPU core, and that will influence you to select a CPU core for your MCU. There are also some other criteria that are more soft criteria. I mean that this criteria, the first one is the tools. So it's not directly related to the design of the CPU, but it has an influence because with some CPU, you may not have the same tools or the tool that you want to use.
Can I ask one question about
Yes.
the last slide?
Yes.
That size difference?
Yes.
How did you use the same compiler? Couldn't do that.
No, we cannot do that, yeah, for sure. So yeah, for sure, the compiler has an influence, yes.
And you said the compiler was going to size optimize.
Size optimize. We use the same, okay, use 2 different compilers, you're right, but we use the same size optimization with the maximum size optimization in both cases. So looking at the tools, so there are many, so when you look at development tools, you will think about IDEs. So there are many choices of IDEs. So let's say very commercial IDEs, open source, many others possibility. In terms of compilers also, you will have lots of options for compilers. In terms of emulators, so we'll have a look also when choosing your MCU and the CPU core that is in your MCU, you will have a look at what are the emulators that are available for it. And also the debug capability. So what kind of debug can I do with these tools? Can I do multiple breakpoint? Can I have a trace capability? So these are the parameters that are important for the developer. So I'm just asking a question. So does the core have an impact, the core that you choose, does the core have an impact on your ability to use tools, development tools for your microcontroller? So if you look at tool support, in fact, you can see that whatever the core, very often, so for the established microcontrollers, the semiconductor vendor will propose you a tool, development tools, an IDE. So you have various in-house solutions, whatever the core is used. Now, if you look at open source tools like GNU compiler, you will see that they support more or less everything, in fact. All the cores, once again, all the established core on the market are supported by GNU. And then if you look at very popular tools, so key market leaders like IAR in the tool industry, you can see that they just ask you choose your chip vendor. They will support anything and they will support any core. So it's fair to say that there is no real impact if you choose a core from an established vendor. If you choose a CPU core that is established on the market, there is no real impact in terms of the tools that you can choose. And then if you look at debug capability, it's a little the same. If I'm here comparing ARM Cortex-M, RX, AVR, MIPS core, so you look at the debug capability that you have with these cores, they are all the same more or less. You have breakpoints, we have watch points, you have trace capability, lots of kind of trace capability, and you have low pin count also debug. So all these cores and all these core solutions provide the same kind of debug capability. So it's difficult, so except for, I'm sure maybe some of you are tools experts, so you say, no, this one has this better and this one has this less. But it's for, let's say, the user, it's very difficult to find a clear difference in terms of tools when comparing cores. So tools is less a parameter that, it's not a parameter that has that much an impact in the core you will choose. Now another thing is software support. So we say, okay, what about software support? Does that have an impact when I choose a core for my MCU? What is the impact of this choice on the software that we will have available for my microcontroller? So you will want to ask this question, why? Because you think that most of the time you are under constraint for your development. So if you have ready to use off-the-shelf software, it will help you a lot, help you meet your time to market. And you will have a look at the free software that is available, so open source software or software available from your vendor, from the silicon vendor. And you will also have a look at the commercial software that you can get. So I'm showing here a typical application where you have the CPU core, the microcontroller, the board system around it, and the software that you will build on top of that. So we'll have certainly a hardware abstraction layer, maybe a real-time operating system. We will have some board-specific drivers. So what we can see here is that the hardware abstraction layer is not really related to your CPU core. It's more related to your microcontroller, because it's related to the peripherals that you have in your system, in your microcontroller. And if you look at higher-end development frameworks like Java, Arduino, you may think about POSIX. You will have also some application builder that you can have on top of your software. This is also MCU specific. There is no real standard for one core. And in fact, it will depend on your MCU vendor. It will depend also on the way your MCU is supported. Now, if you look one step further, if you think about real-time operating system and middleware, so we have here the RTOS. We can have add some middleware on top of that. So if your application is a little more complex, you may need things like TCP/IP, CAN software, graphics software. So these are kind of middleware that are popular in the embedded world, and you may need to use these for your application. First, you can say that the real-time operating system, this is widely available for many, many cores. So here again, the core that you are going to choose has no real impact on the availability of your real-time operating system. You have all the established cores, you can MIPS, ARM, RX on the market. They all have a very wide set of real-time operating system available. And then if you look at the middleware, well, the middleware is portable C code for most of it. So also it's not really related to your core, the core that you are choosing, but it's more related to how your vendor is supporting these middlewares or these third-party people that will provide this middleware to make sure that it's available for you. And the last point concerning software, it may be the solution. So it means that not real middleware, but software that is really dedicated to one specific application. So we can think about typically MFI software, Android, application protocol, for instance. You can think about solar panel, motor control software. So this is very dedicated to one application. So this again, when you look at this software, it's really specific to the microcontroller. It's not really specific to the core. There is nothing really in motor control. It's more about how you manage the timers, how you manage your PWM, your dead time, your analog. So it's really related to the microcontroller and the periphery of the microcontroller. There is no the link to the CPU is very very limited. So I want to say that just for solution and software, it's not really the CPU that will matter. It's really the CPU core that is inside your microcontroller that will matter. It's more the way your silicon vendor and the way your microcontroller provider has worked with partners, has worked also internally to provide you with good software and good solutions. So the, let's say, last criteria, I would say the criteria that is also a soft criteria. It's not directly related to the core, but it's very important criteria. It's what are the products that are available that support this core. So when you choose a core, you can have a very good core, but if you have a very limited offer of microcontrollers that support this core, then it will not be a good choice for you. So you want to look at a core that is supported with vendors that have a wide product offer with compatible products. You want also to choose a core where you have vendors that have a product that is cost effective, that provide reduction in terms of system cost. You want to have a very good supply chain and technical support and a good quality for this product. And you want to choose also a core that will enable you to have a vendor with whom you can have a long-term partnership and that has some technology and product roadmap that fit your needs and that provide you with some independence. So if you look at our RX product, we strive to provide exactly that. So we have today RX 200, RX 600 products that are available today. And we have just announced that we are going to bring two new products, so new families. The RX 700 with 240 megahertz, designed with our 40 nanometer technology, and the RX 100, which is our lowest power product will be a lowest power 32-bit product, and it will be the entry level for the RX family. So with this product range, in fact, you can go from 8 kilobyte up to 8 megabyte with a single family of product. So this will answer, I would say, the product range question. And you can see here today with what we have, as of today, we have product from 32K to 2 megabyte, 48 pin to 177 pin. With this new addition, we go down to 8K, so the pin count also will go down to around 36 pins, so 36 pin 8K, and we go up to 8 megabyte of flash. So we have a very wide portfolio of completely core compatible and peripheral compatible products. I want to take the opportunity also to show the roadmap for RX, to answer also the question about technology roadmap and long-term roadmap. So this is something that you have to ask yourself when choosing a supplier. Showing first the low power roadmap. So we have today our 210, 220 device and 218 device. These devices are either in production or sampling now, so we can get them. So 210 is 50 megahertz, 220 is 32 megahertz, and 21A is a specific device that has a 24-bit sigma delta ADC and AES encryption. So we are extending this family with new products up to 1 megabyte of flash, so for the 210 family. With a new product we call RX211 with USB and up to 256 KB of flash. And we are bringing the RX100, so the lowest power RX and our entry-level 32-bit device that brings RX core performance with the lowest power and in a very cost-effective manner. So this RX100, you can see it at the exhibit. We have a demo showing the first samples of RX100 working, and you can see really the low power capability of this device. So I just want to highlight here for the RX100 the achievement that we did with this device. It's the RX performance, so still the RX performance, 1.56 DEMIS per megahertz. We just announced that with IR that we are able to reach 3.12 core marks per megahertz with our RX600. With our RX200 and the RX100 is 3.08 core marks per megahertz, very high core mark score. And so that leads to the fact that the RX100 is the leading, the best-in-class device today in terms of power efficiency with over 14 core marks per milliamp. So this is for the dynamic power. If you look at our high performance roadmap, so we have today many products based on the RX600 in the RX600 series. So many products with the high performance RX core with FPU in a power control, motor control, or general purpose. So we'll extend our family in the motor control side with up to 512 KB of flash and the capability to run free motor control at the same time. We have also still some new development for the our RX630 family with 100 megahertz flash. So we have new devices up to 256 KB of SRAM. We have a new devices with lower flash content, so lower cost, but still in the 631 high performance family. And we'll be bringing two new devices, two new families. First one is the 64 with 120 megahertz, 4 megabyte of flash, and more than 256 KB of SRAM. And another one will be the RX700 with 240 megahertz and more than 4 megabyte of flash and 256 KB of SRAM. So these two devices are designed in our 40 nanometer process, the same one that we're using with the our RH850 automotive product. And these two products will have enhanced function in terms of audio capability, HMI capability, encryption, connectivity. So we are speaking about cores today, so it's fair to, I think it's legitimate to show you also about our core improvements. So we are using in the RX core, the RX V1 core that goes up to 100 megahertz and it delivers 3.12 core marks per megahertz. Our new products in 40 nanometer will use our RX V2 core, which is the same core, it's compatible, but it has some improvement in terms of performance. So it will lead to 3.5 core marks per megahertz. And we have some also plan for higher performance and smaller gate count, smaller code size cores. So if you look at the V2 core, I'm showing here some, what you have to look at here is the core mark per megahertz. We have 3.5, so it outperforms competition today, and the same for the Drystone benchmark. And another thing is that if you look at the, one other thing to mention is that this V2 core also will bring some very good improvement in terms of DSP capability and floating point calculation. So here I'm showing some implementation of FFT, digital filter, matrix operation, and the comparison with this V2 core and the Cortex-M4 core that is the, let's say, DSP capable core from ARM. And you can see that with this new V2 core, we'll have more or less twice the performance. So the lower is better. So we have, in fact, we have twice the performance of Cortex-M4. And this is very soon. This will come very soon because the first product with this core will be sampling in Q2 next year. So it's in design now. So putting it all together, so in terms of performance, we saw that the core has an impact, definitely, but also the implementation of your microcontrollers, typically the flash interface, how your flash interface is connected to your MCU. In terms of DSP, yes, the core has an impact. Definitely, it's mainly the core. In terms of code size, we have seen that the core implementation of your core has definitely an impact in the code size. And power, we have seen that core has an impact, but it's not only the core, it's also the system that you have around. And the core is just a portion, and the implementation of your core also has an impact on your global power. Tools and software, we've seen that mainly is the way the silicon vendor will support you that will matter, not really the core that you are using. And the same in terms of product. The product is definitely, okay, it's somewhat related to the core, but it's mainly the way the silicon vendor will support you that has an impact. And we have seen also that in all these points, the RX core has a very good value proposition. So now we have 5 minutes before the end, so I just want to finish with a small story and a small question. So is there anything like a standard core? So some of you will certainly say yes. For instance, look at ARM, it's standard. We can say also, why not MIPS? It's standard, it's an IP core. So we can say that certainly yes for, okay, the question is there anything like a standard MCU, sorry. So in terms of core, you can say, okay, certainly there is a standard core. We can say, okay, somewhat standard. It means that it's widely used by several vendors. This is the case. But now if you look at microcontroller, is there anything like a standard microcontroller? Let's look at the system. If you look at all the different solutions you have, supposedly, for instance, based on ARM or based on MIPS, they all have a different system peripherals. If you look at peripherals, it's the same. All the peripherals are different. You don't have the same I2C or the same UART peripheral in the different solutions that you can find. And in fact, if you look at performance, the performance is also very different from one vendor to the other. Analog is different, definitely different. ADC is different. If you look at a solution based on ARM core and another one from another vendor, the power will be different. The analog will be different. The power also is completely different. You can have very low power solution and not so good or not low power solution with the same core. the tools also, when you look at vendors, silicon vendors that will propose you some proprietary tools, they will give you some very specific tools, and these are not standard. And then if you look at even the software, if you have different solutions with the same core from different silicon vendors, you will even have the software library that will be not the same. In fact, there is no standard, even if there are some initiatives to give some standard software library, there is no standard software library today. So, in terms of third-party tools and third-party software, there is no real benefit in having, let's say, a core from an IP supplier like ARM. They support, we have seen they support more or less everyone. Do you agree with this picture? So I would like to tell you a story now. It's the story of Jack. So Jack is a developer. He likes the idea of a standard microcontroller. Or in fact, what he's choosing is a standard core. So kind of standard core. So he said, OK, I will start with a standard core. Let's start with ARM. And then I say, for sure, with a standard core, I will choose a microcontroller. But when he chooses a microcontroller, he chooses a proprietary set of peripheral and system, for sure. No one is the same. So you choose something proprietary. And then the vendor tells him, oh, look, I have my nice IDE, nice tools. They are free of charge. Jack says, OK, yes, I will use it. So then Jack has now a proprietary development tool, development environment. And then the vendor tells him, oh, I have drivers also and real-time operating system, and they are free of charge. Jack says, yes, why not? So Jack will use now a proprietary set of drivers and real-time operating system. It's a real-time operating system that cannot find anywhere else. OK? And then Jack needs some TCP IP stack. And the vendor tells him, oh, I have also some TCP IP stack. So he ends up with also a proprietary TCP IP stack. So at the end, how standard is that?
How quickly do they obsolete the processor?
Huh?
How quickly do they obsolete the proprietary processor? Which makes all of the rest available.
Yeah, exactly. But even if you don't look at the processor, the problem is that while wanting to start with a core, in fact, it did not consider all the software. And really, the software will make all this solution, all this story about standard MCU or standard core irrelevant. And that's why, in fact, in Renesas, we believe that it's not the core that is really the problem if you speak about standardization. We believe in Renesas that the standard should be really at the software level. And that's why we are partnering with many partners, many third-party partners to provide good solution, good software solution. And that's why also we are investing in open source solutions like GNU and Eclipse. And that's why also we are doing this, typically this partnership with Micrium, where we're offering the real-time operating system from Micrium and all their middleware stack free of charge for everyone that start a design with RX or RL by March 31st, 2013. So this is really a way for us to foster software independence for our customers. So just to finish, you can learn more on RX on our website. Okay. I think it's too late to take questions. I can take questions outside. Thank you.